Night Shift Whispers.
A crimson slip of paper slipped under my door. I picked it up and examined it. A brief message was written on it as follows: "Let's reminisce. It's been so long since we've seen each other. Let the mysteries between us unravel. Come to the school building on Saturday at 8 a.m. Yours, K.A." What is this? A reunion invitation? I called Clara, my former classmate from high school, to ask her about the strange invitation. She said she also found a similar slip of paper under her door. After asking around to make sure the other friends were coming, it was finally decided that Clara and I would come too. On the appointed day, a red bus was parked in front of the school building. On its windshield was a large sticker that read, "Reunion Trip." A mysterious man of slender build, with a bucket hat obscuring part of his face, directed us to board the bus. He said he would take us to the real reunion location. So the reunion is not in the school auditorium? I was wondering. I approached the slender man and asked him a few questions, but he seemed reluctant to answer. His voice was flat and uninviting, matching his expression, which was hidden behind his bucket hat. He simply stated that the group would be taken to a villa. Reunion and vacation. My friends were excited. They didn't care at all that the reunion was so mysterious and full of riddles. Everything was still unclear. Who was the organizer? Where was the place? What was the concept of the event? There was no clue about these basic things. Was the organizer here with us? Why did he have to keep his identity a secret? For a surprise? The bus departed from the school building around 9 a.m. Just before that, the mysterious driver had distributed food and drinks to us. Shortly after the bus started moving, a terrible drowsiness came over me. Then I fell asleep soundly, for how long I don't know. When I woke up, the sun had already started to set. Suddenly I realized that the atmosphere in the bus was so quiet. There was no longer the deafening noise of my friends, who had been so noisy before. Could the food and drinks that were distributed earlier contain sleeping pills? Suspicious. And why were we made to sleep? Could this be a mass kidnapping? I started to get worried. I looked out the window of the bus, wondering where we were going. The driver hadn't told us anything about our destination, and I was starting to get curious. The road we were on wound its way up into the mountains, flanked by dense forests and thickets. The road was narrow, just wide enough for the bus to pass. I guessed that if we met another vehicle, one of us would have to pull over into the bushes. Luckily, the area was deserted. We hadn't seen another car since we left town, and it seemed that this road was rarely used. But something familiar tickled the back of my mind. I had the feeling I had been down this road before. It was a place I knew. I took a few minutes to try to remember. Wasn't this the road to the lake in the highlands where we had camped when we were younger? A few minutes later, the bus pulled over. My hunch was confirmed. This was the same lake we had visited before. But there was something different about it now. On the edge of the cliff, overlooking the lake, stood a grand villa. That was where our group was headed. Seeing the inviting destination, everyone seemed to agree to set aside their questions. They entered the villa with joy. I felt a little uneasy, but I didn't have much choice. I reluctantly followed them inside, my mind full of questions and concerns. The villa was vast, with enough rooms to accommodate our group of 38 people. It seemed as if the villa had been prepared for us in advance. However, even after we had all been assigned rooms, no one knew who owned it. The strange driver left with his red bus. Soon after, several food trucks arrived with delicious food and drinks. The food truck workers worked silently, serving us until they were needed no more. In short, all of our needs were met by the mysterious organizers. This included everything we needed for a party that night. The party was in full swing. Everything was going so well that everyone was caught up in the moment. No one wanted to question who was behind the event. We chatted, joked, ate, drank, sang, danced, played games, and even had some late-night dates with people we had been interested in before, or who had just started to interest us. At midnight, our fun was interrupted by a torrential downpour. Lightning flashed and thunder roared incessantly. Then, our party was completely ruined when the power went out. The only emergency lighting was provided by our cell phone flashlights, as our search for lanterns or candles throughout the villa was unsuccessful. Most of us gathered in the villa's spacious sitting room. Suddenly, a dead crow was thrown into the middle of the crowd, out of nowhere. The black crow looked like it had just been killed. Its neck was twisted as if it had been broken by a powerful force, and its body was crushed underfoot. Fresh blood seeped out from between its thick feathers. In the panic, someone accidentally knocked over a glass of wine. The glass shattered on the floor, and when the shards were cleaned up, we discovered that the liquid in the glass was not drink at all, but fresh blood. In the midst of the chaos, someone else in a corner of the room screamed hysterically. A hand with long nails had grabbed her foot from under the table. In another corner, a flash of red flipped by. It was vaguely like a woman in a red dress with brown blonde hair. That figure then took over the stage. She suddenly appeared from various corners, her face unclear, but her skin was as smooth as porcelain. She appeared quickly, then disappeared quickly, then suddenly appeared in another corner. The girl screamed in fear. Some people who didn't believe in ghosts began to make logical assumptions. "This is just a prank," they said. If you trace it back from the beginning, when we first found the invitation, followed by the mysterious bus, the mysterious driver, everyone who fell asleep on the way, and so on, all of that shows that the event organizer is indeed setting all this up for a prank, because he has an unusual sense of humor. He must be secretly making a candid video to upload to social media later, to have fun. Humor? Fun? Those who thought this was just a prank were only deluding themselves. This was not a joke at all. This place had been chosen for a specific reason, not just because it was beautiful. Maybe everyone was pretending to forget, but those bad memories would never be erased from their minds forever. For years ago, when we had been camping on the shore of the lake in front of this villa, one of our friends had disappeared. Yes, she had just disappeared and had never been found to this day. I was stunned. Suddenly, I remembered that the initials on the reunion invitation were the same as the name of our missing friend. Kayla Anastasia. Kayla brought us here to seek revenge. I tried to voice my thoughts even though my voice was choked in my throat. Anxiety struck. Although some people still insisted on denying it, others began to be brave enough to admit that they actually suspected Kayla had been murdered by someone from their own side, not kidnapped by an outsider as had been assumed incorrectly, as if they were denying the bad things that could happen among themselves. In the end, someone managed to capture the face of the woman in red with the flashlight. And true, it was Kayla. It was Kayla's face, but in a pale and vengeful appearance. The figure approached us slowly, moving with fluid grace. We huddled in fear, clutching each other. The figure, in the guise of Kayla, stared unblinkingly at one person, continuing to approach her, Diana. Diana's eyes widened in fear, unable to speak. We waited to see what would happen next. Without warning, Diana's trembling hand pointed to someone not far from her, Rachel. Rachel shook her head violently and began to cry. She stammered out her denials. She said it wasn't her idea. She was just told about it shortly before the plan was carried out. She was only helping. Diana was the mastermind behind the murder. She also pointed to someone else, Angel. Everyone was shocked. So Kayla was killed by all three of them? Our memories flashed back to the past. Kayla, who was too beautiful, was indeed liked by almost all the boys in our school. She was dating Jason, a guy that Diana was very fond of. It was no secret that Diana, who was jealous, hated Kayla very much. However, no one had thought that she would even plan such a heinous act. Yes, we still remember that it was Diana and her close friends who came up with the idea of camping by the lake. No one had time to process what was happening. Suddenly, the entire living room was splattered with fresh blood. Diana's cries of pain were heart-wrenching, followed by Angel's cries for mercy. A loud, howling scream broke the silence of the night. All the lights went out. Everything went dark. So dark. I don't know what happened next, but when a bright light shone in my eyes, I found myself in a hospital room with several parts of my body bandaged. I asked what happened, and they said that the tour bus that took us on vacation had crashed into a ravine. One person could not be saved, namely Diana. 2 people were seriously injured and unconscious. They were Angel and Rachel. The rest survived, only suffering minor injuries. The location of the bus crash that took us was not far from the lake. The driver ran away and was nowhere to be found. And the bus we were riding was actually a bus owned by Diana's parents' company. Oddly, the bus was blue, not red like I saw at the beginning. I also asked about the villa. People said the villa never existed. Worried about my own sanity, I tried to contact my friends as soon as possible, asking if their stories might be different from mine. Oddly, our stories were the same. And as I suspected, when we tried to find the red invitation we had received earlier, the invitation was also gone. What was even more shocking was that a human skeleton was also found in the ravine where our bus crashed. The remains of red cloth, which was the last clothing worn by the skeleton, could still be identified. Yes, it was the dress that Kayla wore the last time before she disappeared. After being matched with Kayla's family's DNA, it was a match. The skeleton was Kayla Anastasia, who disappeared 4 years ago.